Coming up on our newscast tonight. Record-breaking weather conditions continue in South Korea. The mercury spikes to 40 in one city, and as people turn up the AC, demand for electricity shoots up to concerning levels. During a cabinet meeting, President Moon Jae-in points out the government should consider the prolonged heat wave as a natural disaster, while highlighting the need to draw up a crisis management manual and compensation plan for damages. North Korea delivers on its promise of taking steps to denuclearize. Satellite images show the regime has begun dismantling missile facilities, including a rocket engine test stand. NEWSCENTER begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, time for Arirang News Center. Hello and welcome. Live from Seoul, I'm Daniel Chan. A few days back, the high in Seoul went up to 38 degrees Celsius. There's little relief today. The scorcher continues. According to our Chae Siyoung, the entire nation is now under a heat wave warning, with one city even hitting the big 40.
South Korea was sizzling with daytime highs. Seoul hit almost 37 degrees, 1 degree short of record high 2 days earlier. The high in Yeoju, a city in Gyeonggi-do province, and Yeongcheon in Gyeongsang-buk-do province surpassed 40 degrees. The whole nation was under heat wave warning issued when highs topped 35 degrees. Here in southern Seoul, the heat wave is expected to push the temperature even higher, and the weather agency advises people to refrain from outdoor activities.
The road is too hot and the sun is too strong, so I have to carry this parasol. It's just exhausting.
It's humid and the sun is too strong, so I am so anxious about being out. I am wearing sunscreen, but I'm still worried.
Health experts are urging people to drink lots of water and stay indoors. The heat has pushed up demand for electricity. According to Korea Power Exchange, electricity demand set a new record high for a second day in a row. At around 5 p.m. Tuesday, demand surged to about 92 million kilowatts, exceeding the government forecast by about 2 million kilowatts. The government said it keeps about 7 million kilowatts of electricity in reserve. Chae Siyoung, Arirang News.
And with the intense heat wave expected to stick around for quite a bit, President Moon Jae-in called for measures to deal with what he feels should be considered a natural disaster. Min Gab-ryong shares with us his remarks.
The record-breaking heat wave sweeping across the nation also took grip of the cabinet meeting on Tuesday as President Moon Jae-in raised the need to include heat wave in the list of natural disasters under the Act on the Management of Disasters and Safety.
장기화되는 폭염을 특별 재난 수준으로 인식하고 관련 대책을 다시 한번 꼼꼼히 챙겨주시기 바랍니다.
South Korea has been under a hot spell in the recent days, with daytime highs setting records every day, resulting in heat-related illnesses and even deaths. The South Korean president called on his government to swiftly draw up a crisis management manual and create basis for damage compensation.
또 식중독, 감염병 등에 대한 대책과 또 폭염으로 인한 도로 파손이나 열차 선로 문제 등에 대한 대책도 시급하다고 봅니다.
The current Disasters and Safety Act defines natural disasters as situations caused by weather conditions such as typhoons, floods, droughts, earthquakes, and meteorites, but not intense heat. The nation's Disaster Control Center has been maintaining that stance, citing reasons that temperature fluctuations following seasonal changes were predictable. But with rising death toll and damages from heat-related causes, the South Korean government recently decided to support the National Assembly when it reviews revision of the related laws. President Moon also ordered the nation's energy ministry to disclose its power supply plan, its forecast and countermeasures as demand for electricity soars in earlier than expected and ever-intense heat conditions. Min Gab-ryong, Arirang News, The Blue House.
Keeping our sights fixed here in Korea, last week a 4-year-old girl died in a van. She was stuck alone under the sweltering heat. In response, the government wants to make sure vehicles that carry kids are equipped with a system that prevents any one of them from being left behind. Won Jung-hwan fills us in on how it would work.
The South Korean government plans to enforce more strict public safety measures in the coming years. In Tuesday's cabinet meeting, President Moon Jae-in called for the thorough implementation of systems meant to prevent deadly accidents involving children. His call follows the death last week of a 4-year-old girl who had been left by herself for 7 hours inside the van that took her to daycare. She had succumbed to the record-breaking summer heat.
최근 어린아이들이 안타깝게 생명을 잃는 사고들이 발생했습니다. 어른들이 조금만 신경을 썼더라면 예방할 수 있는 사고가 반복적으로 발생하니 참으로 답답한 심정입니다. 각종 대책들이 현장에서 제대로 작동하지 않는 원인과 미흡한 점이 무엇인지 점검하고 세세한 부분까지 다시 다듬어서 다시는 이러한 사고가 반복되지 않도록 해야 하겠습니다.
The driver of the van in Dongducheon, Gyeonggi-do province told police he had not gone to check the back of the vehicle, something he said was not unusual. The girl's daycare didn't even contact her parents to ask where she was until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. To prevent such accidents in the future, the government will require the installation of safety system on more than 28,000 vehicles that carry children. It's a device that activates warning lights when children get in the bus, and it stays on even once the bus's ignition is turned off. The driver has to go to the back of the bus to turn it off within 3 minutes, which means he or she will find any children still on board. In the past 2 years, there have been 6 cases nationwide where children were left in buses, including the one last week. To make the country safer for children, the government also plans to make daycare centers use sensors and IT systems to monitor children's whereabouts. 원정환, 아리랑 뉴스.
The mercury is expected to hover well above 30 for days to come here in the nation. Naturally, people are looking for ways to find relief from the sweltering conditions. Hong Yu sheds light on what's being done to stay cool.
The entire nation seems to be baking in record-breaking temperatures since last week, and avoiding the sun seems to be of no avail, prompting people to seek other ways to beat the heat effectively and immediately. And the first option for many residents are the pools and water parks along the Hangang riverbanks.
The weather is hot, but the pool is cold, so I'm having fun here.
This outside pool at a park along the Hangang River is full with kids who are now in summer vacation. The entrance fee to this pool is less than $5, making it a popular place to enjoy the hot weather. But there are also those who would prefer to stay out of the sizzling sun completely. Various facilities like the Sports Monster theme park in Goyang, northeast of Seoul, offer a vast array of fun indoor activities for all ages. The number of visitors have increased noticeably, especially during the past week when temperatures reached their peak.
It's really hot outside, but this park is indoors, so we can have fun doing different things in a cool area.
There are also those who would prefer to cool down by sweating the heat out, and the places for doing so are the quintessential locations for relax, the 찜질방 or Korean dry saunas. Many people choose to visit these saunas to get rid of stress, socialize, bond, and recover one's strength. The current sizzling summer temperature could last for a month, according to the Korean Meteorological Administration. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
We've not heard of any progress in nuclear disarmament efforts by North Korea since the historic summit with Washington. At last, some visible steps. The regime has begun taking apart key missile facilities. Lee Ji-won zooms in on the welcome developments.
North Korea seems to be keeping the promise it made to U.S. President Donald Trump last month about dismantling its missile engine test site. U.S.-based North Korea monitoring website 38 North said on Monday that new commercial satellite images of the Sohae Satellite Launching Station, which is the regime's main space vehicle launch site, show the North has started dismantling key facilities. They include a rail-mounted processing building where rocket parts are assembled and the rocket engine test stand used for developing liquid fuel engines for ballistic missiles and space launch vehicles. In the satellite images of the site taken on July 20th and July 22nd, the roof and support structures of the rail-mounted processing facility have been progressively and partially taken down. Cranes were also spotted in the area, and the test stand superstructure has been completely dismantled. Considering that the dismantled facilities were key parts of the regime's intercontinental ballistic missile program, 38 North says such efforts are a significant step by North Korea. South Korea's Blue House National Security Office Deputy Director Nam Kwan-pyo also welcomed the move as a step towards the regime's denuclearization. But a North Korea expert said while the dismantling of the facility is a positive sign, the U.S. is likely to wait until the facility is completely dismantled before praising the North's initiative.
If Pyongyang completely dismantles the facility without any conditions, it has taken the first step in building trust with the U.S. and can ask the same from Washington. But if the initial stages of dismantlement are simply being done to receive something in exchange, it's not strong enough to get the U.S. to move.
But regardless, the expert added that the U.S. is not likely to give North Korea anything like the much-coveted declaration to end the Korean War in exchange. He also said that this way of give one, get one exchange is not what the U.S. wants, as it not only gives North Korea the lead, but also does not follow the process of declaration, inspection, and verification. 이지원, Arirang News.
Officials from the two Koreas checked the rail lines crossing north of the border along the western coast today. They looked into 3 train stations along the section running between Kaesong Station and the military demarcation line and discussed how they should conduct the joint inspection from hereafter. Seoul's Unification Ministry says the overall facilities such as the roadbed and the rail tracks were in good shape. Today's joint inspection was the second of its kind, following the one on the rails along the east coast last Friday. The move comes after an agreement was reached in June to modernize North Korea's railway network, as well as those that cut across the inter-Korean border. Staying with Seoul and Pyongyang's joint work on cross-border railways, once they make headway in improving these routes, it could open doors for greater coordination, especially transport projects. Kim Hye-sung help us gauge the potential of this ongoing inter-Korean collaboration.
On May 17, 2007, 2 trains crossed the military demarcation line that separates the two Koreas. They traveled along 2 railways, the Gyeonggi Line in the west and the Donghae Line in the east, in the first trial run since the Korean War.
Daejin Station is the northeasternmost station in South Korea. It's about 6 kilometers from the DMZ and about 10 kilometers from the north's Gamho Station.
It's one of the stops on the Donghae Line that runs to North Korea's Mount Kumgang Station. After being left empty for about a decade since train services stopped in 2008, Daejin Station could possibly see trains from North Korea coming in again. Officials from Seoul and Pyongyang have begun joint inspections into the Donghae Line and Gyeonggi Line railway sections on the North Korean side as part of the Panmunjom Declaration. Reconnecting inter-Korean transport links is also part of President Moon Jae-in's new economic roadmap, which aims to connect South Korea with the north via the Donghae Line and Gyeonggi Line and connect to Russia, China, and Europe through the Trans-Siberian Railway and Trans-China Railway. If completed, the railways would enable free movement of people and resources between the two Koreas and also cut transport times between South Korea and Europe by 1/3 compared to sea routes. For it to succeed, however, experts say a step-by-step approach and funding is key.
It's not just the railways themselves. Electricity and other infrastructure would need to be built in the north. North Korean trains are also mostly outdated and run at a speed of about 30 kilometers an hour. All this improvement requires enormous funding and years of work. With North Korea under UN sanctions, direct global financing is impossible. So in order to find sources of funding, cooperation with the global community would also be needed.
Under current UN sanctions, technology transfers or direct economic projects in the north are banned. South Korea's transport ministry says it plans to start restoring the severed sections in the south first, like the section between Daejin and Gangneung on the Donghae Line starting later this year, as a first step towards reconnecting inter-Korean transport. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
Pyongyang wants Washington to agree to a peace treaty before moving forward with denuclearization talks. America begs to differ. It should be the other way around, the regime giving up nukes first. The U.S. also warned businesses not to breach sanctions imposed on the communist state. For details, let's turn to our Park Hee-jun.
The United States has once again made it clear that there will be no peace treaty until North Korea's complete denuclearization. CNN, citing unnamed sources, reported that Pyongyang is unlikely to proceed further with denuclearization talks unless Washington makes the bold move of agreeing to a peace treaty with Pyongyang. North Korea has been pushing for a formal end to the Korean War, which would act as a security guarantee for the Kim Jong-un regime. But an official at the U.S. State Department told Yonhap News on Monday local time that although peace on the Korean peninsula is a shared goal of the international community, it will not involve a nuclear-armed North Korea. The official said the current armistice agreement will be replaced by a permanent peace treaty only when North Korea denuclearizes for good. The State Department, together with the Department of the Treasury and the Department of Homeland Security, has also issued a North Korea sanctions advisory and enforcement advisory against foreign companies to protect them from violating U.S. or UN Security Council sanctions. It warns manufacturers, buyers, and service providers against sourcing goods, services, or technology from North Korea or hiring North Korean laborers that would raise revenues for the North Korean regime. The advisory does not add any new sanctions against Pyongyang, but reflects President Donald Trump's vow to maintain maximum pressure against the regime until its nuclear disarmament is complete. It says that businesses found to be involved in such acts will be penalized by the U.S. or UN sanctions authorities. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Seoul's Unification Minister expects war to officially end on the Korean peninsula before the year is up. Speaking at the business report meeting of the National Assembly's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee, Cho Myung-gyun claimed the two Koreas and the U.S. are working to achieve such a declaration by the end of 2018. When asked whether the agreements of the Singapore summit are being implemented thoroughly, the minister replied Pyongyang's latest decision to dismantle its missile engine test site could be perceived as a positive sign. The controversial document containing detailed procedures for the potential invocation of martial law was a subject of deep discussion at the National Assembly. Rival lawmakers questioned military officials on why such plans were drawn up and demanded a thorough investigation. Kim Min-ji has the highlights from that briefing session.
Rival lawmakers on Tuesday debated a highly controversial military document containing detailed procedures for the potential declaration of martial law. At a parliamentary briefing, they agreed that a thorough investigation is needed to find out exactly why the Defense Security Command drew up the documents and who was really behind it. The ruling Democratic Party of Korea called it an act of causing social disorder and said those involved need to be held accountable.
We cannot accept that drafting the documents was the decision of Defense Security Command. They must have been told to do it by someone higher up, and then the head of the unit ordered it done. That line of command has to be figured out.
I understand.
The Defense Security Command, the military's intelligence wing, is under fire after documents were found showing plans to consider the possibility of invoking martial law to quell protest if a court ruling last year on the impeachment of then-President Park Geun-hye caused public unrest. The military and the prosecution are forming a joint investigation team to look into whether the documents were in any way illegal. The main opposition Liberty Korea party, meanwhile, questioned what the purpose of the documents was, whether the unit was within its rights to draw up such measures in preparation for an emergency, or whether there was some other plan in the works.
There are two views. One is that it was drawn up to prepare for a worst-case scenario that could compromise national security, or that it was a plan for a certain political group to stage a coup. How do you see it?
I think it'd be best to wait for the probe results.
Rival lawmakers also insisted that the investigation must be transparent and free of interference by the presidential office. Meanwhile, the Defense Ministry said reforms will be carried out at the Defense Security Command, such as stopping the illegal surveillance of civilians, so that it can focus on its core purpose of security and the prevention of espionage. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, President Moon Jae-in formally appointed Min Gab-ryong as head of the National Police. The South Korean leader congratulated the Deputy Police Commissioner on his promotion and asked him to carry out the tasks at hand, including the reallocation of investigative power from the prosecution to the police and the establishment of a municipal police system. Min was approved by Parliament this morning after a confirmation hearing. He is the first police chief to be appointed by the current administration. The nation's top office described Min as someone with a high level of understanding of the administration's security policies, having worked alongside his predecessor for months. Yesterday, a long-respected politician committed suicide to clear his name after being linked to an online opinion rigging scandal. A mourning altar has been set up in Yonsei University's Severance Hospital in Seoul. Thousands, including fellow and rival lawmakers, already bid their last farewells to Roh Hoe-chan. Many more are expected to come and pay their condolences to the late floor leader of the Justice Party. The three-term National Assembly member was an iconic figure in the labor movement and in progressive politics. He jumped to his death on Monday amid an investigation into allegations that he had received illegal political funds. Roh left behind a note explaining that he did accept the money, but it was not in exchange for any special favors. Over in Laos, lives are lost and at least 100 people are missing after a hydroelectric power dam is damaged. According to the country's official news agency, the structure in Nat'l province collapsed Monday evening, releasing 5 billion cubic meters of water into a residential area. Houses are swept away, leaving more than 6,600 people homeless. The dam was scheduled to begin operating this year. It was built by a joint venture led by South Korean companies, including SKENC. The government is currently carrying out rescue and search operations with a full range of available personnel, including soldiers, police, and firefighters. The South Korean government approved a budget to replace Tokyo's roughly $9 million fund for the victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement. The cabinet approved plans to set aside the amount from the Gender Equality Ministry's fund. The government will come up with details on how to spend it, as well as how to deal with the money from Tokyo after consultations with various parties, including the Japanese government. Tokyo created the fund for South Korean victims of Japan's wartime sex crimes following an agreement between the two countries back in 2015. However, the victims refused it as the deal did not meet their demand for legal compensation. The Chinese government's blueprint for boosting economic growth is unveiled by Beijing state media. It's a mix of fiscal and monetary measures, including tax cuts for firms investing in research and development. Our Ko Ryun-hee explains further.
Amid its trade war with the United States, China has unveiled new measures to prevent economic slowdown by boosting domestic demand. According to China State Radio on Monday, Premier Li Keqiang announced at a cabinet meeting that the fiscal policy will become more active and will focus on cutting taxes for companies that are spending money on research and development. The Chinese government is expected to provide tax cuts of $9.6 billion this year. In terms of the monetary policy, the cabinet said it will speed up the issuing of special bonds to finance local government infrastructure projects. The government also promised loans for about 150,000 small firms each year. Meanwhile, the People's Bank of China set the yuan midpoint rate at 6.7891 against the US dollar Tuesday, its weakest since July 2017. Although some say the yuan depreciation is partially the result of Chinese policies, an economic expert says there are other external factors.
And because the U.S. economy is doing so well, there's a good chance that the Fed will keep raising the interest rates. And the interest rate differential between U.S. and China would also depreciate the yuan even without efforts by China. So I think the yuan depreciation is a result of policies from both countries rather than due to just one country.
This expert believes China aims to boost domestic demand and increase exports for overall economic growth.
GDP consists of domestic spending plus exports. And because Chinese growth rate seems to be slowing down, it would be in their interest to increase both domestic expenditures and exports to maintain their GDP growth.
The moves come during the escalating trade conflict between the United States and China, which have so far imposed tariffs on $34 billion worth of each other's goods. 고륜이 아리랑 뉴스.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the latest updates. Michelle, this summer's heat wave is showing no signs of stopping.
Daniel, we saw the peak of this season's heat wave today, and Seoul was hotter than yesterday, in fact, and Gyeongju saw a high of 39.3 degrees Celsius. And it's not an official record, but Yeongcheon in Gyeongsangbuk-do province soared up to 40.3 degrees. Now, at this point, we are expecting the scorcher to extend into next month. Now, tomorrow will also be baking hot, but a few sporadic showers are expected in the northern areas for tomorrow, but not enough to bring down the mercury. And Pyongyang and Tokyo will be cooler with heavier rain. Now, with tropical nights, most places, including Seoul, will be at 26 degrees Celsius or even higher. And it will get cloudier into the day, and for Seoul, will temperatures up to 35 degrees. And Gwangju and Daegu will be at 36 and 38 degrees respectively. Do try and avoid the heat during the day and also in the evening. It will be very muggy with the humidity rising day by day. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we could squeeze into our newscast, wherever you may be tuning in from. Thanks for staying with us.